Greetings, my wonderful students. Today we begin our study of colonial Latin America. Now, as you see from this map, it's not just Latin America. You have the 13 colonies, what would become Canada, New France, where Quebec is, and the Louisiana territories. But you also have New Spain, which includes much of what's today the western, southwestern United States, all the way into Central America and South America. And of course, you can see from the various color codings which countries had colonies in which regions. Now, the Spanish Empire, very large as you can see. In 1519, Hernando Cortez invaded the Aztec Empire. He and his forces helped to destroy the Aztecs. And in 1530, Francisco Pizarro invaded the Inca Empire down here. Now, the reasons why the Spanish won. I apologize for this particular picture. It does look rather gross, but this is an example of smallpox. Reasons the Spanish won. One of the first things was they had guns and horses, which were a great advantage in war. The Native Americans had not been exposed to the Chinese, who had invented gunpowder, so they had no such technology. And horses were not something that were here in the Americas. And so when the Native Americans fought against the Spanish cavalry, they really didn't understand how to best fight and what tactics to use. The peoples that the Aztecs had conquered also revolted against the Aztecs. Remember, the Aztecs had built an empire which they had enslaved other peoples and used them in human sacrifice. So when the Spaniards came along and gave these different Native American groups a chance to revolt against the Aztecs, they happily joined the Spaniards to do that. The Spanish brought smallpox with them, which killed millions of Native Americans. Now, this was not done intentionally, at least not at this time. It just so happened that smallpox was endemic, meaning it was always there in Europe, and some of the people who came over from Europe to the Americas had it. And Native Americans who were here had virtually no immunity to it whatsoever, and so many of them died off. At first, the Aztecs thought the Spaniards were gods. Now, it just so happened that the Spaniards arrived around the time a prophecy said gods or the messengers of the gods would arrive, and, oh, here's these strange people who we've never seen before, and they have ships, and they have these weapons, and they have these animals, and, well, here you go. Effects of the Spanish conquest. Now, Spain soon became very rich from their conquest of the Aztecs. Large amounts of gold were taken to Spain from Central and South America. This was the time, of course, where you get the legends about the pirates, and that's because they were always trying to get control of the Spanish gold. The Spanish king spent a great deal of this money on a series of wars and the social system of the New World. Now, Peninsulares were the people who immigrated to the Americas from Spain. They came from the Spanish Peninsula, the Iberian Peninsula. Now, the Creoles were the children of Spanish immigrants. So these top two groups were white. Under these, the mestizos and mulattoes were children of mixed race, specifically Native American and European, or African and European. And they were in the middle. And on the very bottom were the pure Africans who had been enslaved and brought over, and the pure blood Native Americans who were here and had been enslaved as well. So this was your system, social system, where people here from Europe were at the top, and the Native Americans and the enslaved Africans were on the bottom. Powerful landowners. Now, Peninsulares were considered better than others in colonial society. Remember, this is not a time of equality. This is a time where nobles and lords are considered better than commoners, and the Peninsulares believed themselves to be these lords, these aristocrats of the New World. And the Peninsulares and Creoles created large estates. Think like plantations, or if you go back to the Middle Ages, it's modeled off the manor house system. On these estates, peasant farmers would labor for them. Now, if you compare this to later on in the South, under slavery, and you have plantation owners who have slaves laboring for them, or you can look again back to the Middle Ages and see serfs laboring for lords in Europe. It's a similar system. Now, this whole idea of poor farm workers laboring for large, wealthy landowners remained a lasting feature of Latin American society and has affected their political and economic development. Now, the Spanish and Portuguese kings were determined to convert the Native Americans to Christianity, and Catholic missionaries, people who try to convert, went to the New World in large numbers. The church also built cathedrals, orphanages, hospitals, and schools. So you've got a positive and negative effect issue going on here. Catholic missionaries, many of whom had good intentions at heart, converting the natives to what they thought was the one true religion, but in effect destroying the cultures of these different Native American groups. But they also built cathedrals, orphanages, hospitals, and schools, and tried greatly to help the Native Americans that were there. The importation of so much gold into Spain caused prices to rise, inflation. And the expulsion of Jews and Muslims destroyed middle-class industry. Yes, they did that in 1492, proclaiming all of Spain as Catholic. And mercantilism led to price increases too. Remember, of course, we discussed mercantilism, the idea of a favorable balance of trade, and you're going to tax imports that are coming from other countries, and you're going to give money to your businesses so they succeed. Well, that means that your businesses end up charging higher prices. The reason why people were going to buy the imports is because they were cheaper. So these price increases are going to hurt people in the long run. And the continuous wars that I said Spain was fighting drained the treasury. They basically spent a whole bunch of this money on wars, and eventually the Spanish Empire is going to fall. So other European countries began to create trading empires and colonies. As we saw over here, we saw the 13 colonies of Britain, and we saw New France, obviously established by France as well. So these new trading empires are coming up, and with the rise of the Dutch, the French, and the English empires, Spain began to weaken. And that's one of the reasons why Spain didn't remain a major power basically past the mid-1800s. I hope you enjoyed this.